The evidence of the scale and the severity of the human rights violations being perpetrated in Xinjiang against the Uighur Muslims is now far-reaching, and it paints a truly harrowing picture. Violations include the extrajudicial detention of over 1 million Uyghurs and other minorities in political re-education camps, extensive and invasive surveillance targeting minorities, systematic restrictions on Uyghur culture, education, and indeed the practice of Islam, and the widespread use of forced labour. The nature and conditions of detention violate basic standards of human rights and at their worst amount to torture and inhumane and degrading treatment, alongside widespread reports of the forced sterilisation of Uyghur women. The Chinese authorities' own publicly available documents also bear out a very similar picture. They show statistical data on birth control and on security spending and recruitment in Xinjiang, internment camps, arbitrary detention, political re-education, forced labour, torture, and forced sterilisation, all on an industrial scale. It is truly horrific. Barbarism we had hoped lost to another era being practiced today as we speak in one of the leading members of the international community. Mr. Speaker, we have a moral duty to respond. We have repeatedly called for China to allow independent experts and UN officials, including the United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights, proper access to Xinjiang, just as we in this country would allow access to our prisons, to our police custody suites, other parts of the justice system, to independent bodies who will hold us to account for the commitments to respect human rights that we have made. Mr. Speaker, China cannot simply refuse all access to those trusted third-party bodies who could verify the facts and at the same time maintain a position of credible denial. Here in the UK, we must take action to make sure that UK businesses are not part of the supply chains that lead to the gates of the internment camps in Xinjiang, and to make sure that the products of the human rights violations that take place in those camps don't end up on the shelves of supermarkets that we shop in here at home week in, week out. And today I can announce a range of new measures to send a clear message that these violations of human rights are unacceptable, and at the same time to safeguard UK businesses and public bodies from any involvement or links with them. First, today the FCDO and DIT have issued new, robust and detailed guidance to UK businesses on these specific risks faced by companies with links to Xinjiang and underlining the challenges of conducting effective due diligence there. A minister-led campaign of business engagement will reinforce the need for UK businesses to take concerted action to address that particular and specific risk. Second, Mr. Speaker, we are strengthening the operation of the Modern Slavery Act. The Home Office will introduce fines for businesses that do not comply with their transparency obligations, and the Home Secretary will introduce the necessary legislation setting out the level of those fines as soon as parliamentary time allows. Third, we announced last September that the transparency requirements that apply to UK businesses under the Modern Slavery Act will be extended to the public sector. So the SCDO will now work with the Cabinet Office to provide guidance and support to UK government bodies to exclude suppliers where there is sufficient evidence of human rights violations in any of their supply chains. Any company profiting from forced labour will be barred from government procurement in this country. Fourth, Mr. Speaker, the government will conduct an urgent review of export controls as they apply specifically geographically to the situation in Xinjiang, to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to prevent the export of any goods that could directly or indirectly contribute to human rights violations in that region. This package put together will help make sure that no British organisations, government or private sector, deliberately or inadvertently, are profiting from or contributing to human rights violations against the Uyghurs or other minorities in Xinjiang. The overwhelming majority of British businesses wouldn't dream of it. Today's measures will make sure businesses are fully aware of those risks. It will help them to protect themselves but it will also shine a light and penalise any reckless businesses that don't take those obligations seriously.